Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live interview today with Dr. Anna von Rebay, who is coining the term ocean litigation. I'm today's host, Ramona, the education coordinator of Healthy Seas. In her position as founder and CEO of Ocean Vision Legal, Anna is taking important steps to speak up for ocean rights. Ocean Vision Legal is the first law firm worldwide specializing in ocean protection. Moreover, Anna is the ambassador for the German Committee of the UN Ocean Decade. Let's dive right in and explore what ocean litigation even is. We welcome all of your questions from the audience and we'll discuss them throughout the interview. Just leave them in the comments and we will be able to answer them. Welcome, Anna. It's really nice to have you join us tonight.
Thank you, Ramona. Thank you for this nice introduction. I'm very excited to be here with you today. And I'm always very, very excited to have the opportunity to speak about these new movements in law and how we envision to really use the law to save the ocean and to make marine protection effective. So, thank you.
Thank you for joining, and let's get right started with the first question. What are ocean rights? Why should the ocean have rights in the first place? And what is the final purpose of giving it rights?
That's a great and broad question. Ocean rights, the term ocean rights itself, was actually coined by my colleague Michelle Bender back in 2017. And it refers to a moral and ethical and legal recognition of the ocean as a living entity with inherent rights and intrinsic values. So, just as humans have inherent rights for existing, so too do the species in ecosystems with whom we have co evolved. So, the difference is, and how that, why we think the ocean should have rights and how this is making a difference is that traditional laws usually protect nature and the ocean in particular as a resource. So, for example, when you think of traditional marine protection treaties, for example, the United Nations Fish Stock Agreement, they manage and regulate human activities in the ocean with an eye on keeping fish stock on a high level for a good yield. So, as the title already says, it regards the United Nations Fish Stock Agreement regards fish as stock, as a resource for humans. And different to that, in ocean rights, we recognize and we acknowledge that the ocean has inherent values and inherent rights that must be protected just for being the ocean. A fish must protect it just for being the fish and not because it gives us food and is our resource. Therefore, it's also important, for example, how we use our language. In our firm, we have a language guideline in which we write down for everyone who's joining the team. For example, we don't use terms like fish stock. We say fish populations because it already shows that we do not regard fish as our resource. We value fish for its intrinsic values. And therefore, we also don't say that we grant to the ocean. Rather, we acknowledge or recognize the rights of the ocean. So, so ocean rights really seeks to have a shift or to create a shift in the human ocean relationship from one of domination and exploitation to one of respect and stewardship through an ecosystem basis for ethics and ocean governance.
This is
And
really beautiful.
I really think so too. I think it holds so much truth. And it really, ocean rights, of course, ultimately aims also to create a legal shift and to legally recognize the ocean rights.
Mhm.
But also this ethical point of view, I think, is something so important. In a lot of countries that we work or that we have influence, and I'm sure a lot of countries from which people tune in today might be democracies.
Mm-hmm.
And in democracies, the power comes from the people. And the power that we people have is, and this is determined by our ethics, by our values.
Yeah.
So if we are a society in which we value the inherent and intrinsic values of nature, that will reflect in the laws and in the legislations, because that reflects whom we elect. So I think this this ethical understanding is such an important basis. And of course, all my work usually evolves and you know is around the law,
Mm-hmm.
which also then on the other side can guide the values of people. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a reciprocity in which the values of people reflect whom we elect, and then whom we
Mm-hmm.
elect reflect the laws that we have. So it is all based on this legal on the on this ethical understanding, I find.
Mm-hmm. And coming from the ethics and going into the legal component of everything, I really wonder what are the main legal frameworks addressing the rights of the ocean, and where are these frameworks being introduced? So, as you mentioned, democracies, is this like really on a country level? Is it on a international treaty level? Where are we looking for these ocean rights?
Both, really both. So we're working on implementing ocean rights on local, from local to international levels, I want to say. So these frameworks can take so many different shapes. They can be local or federal resolutions, they can be treaty agreements, they can be judicial decisions or constitutional amendments. It can be reflected in national laws through designating marine protected areas in international law, or and really international laws such as the Universal Declaration of Ocean Rights. So there are very many different shapes in which they can take place.
Oh, that's really beautiful. So you're addressing it on all levels, basic, or it is being addressed on all levels. So that's really important, I imagine. And so, can you explain maybe the concept of ocean litigation and how it does differ from traditional environmental litigation?
Yeah, of course. So ocean litigation is a term that I'm trying to coin, and that's like trying to get into existence, because when we look at the past years, something that has really, really inspired people was climate litigation. And climate litigation is a term that only came into being quite recently, like a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now it has evolved to this whole movement. And it is something under climate litigation, we understand those lawsuits that are usually led by young people,
Yes.
by the senior Swiss ladies, by people of all generations who go out on the street and who finally found a tool how to stand up for their rights.
Mm-hmm.
I like using the metaphor of saying it feels like this fresh wind that is blowing around the world, where people are holding their governments responsible for climate obligations.
Yes.
And then I was wondering, why don't we have that for the ocean yet? Why is no one doing that? Like, it's becoming so obvious of how we're depleting the ocean, of how we're drowning the ocean in pollution. Why is no one doing ocean litigation yet? And so
Mm-hmm.
this is how this whole movement came into existence. And ocean litigation really means to judicially enforce the existing marine protection obligations. Because
Mm-hmm.
I find somehow, seems sometimes that people or governments or stakeholders find that there are no marine protection laws out there,
Mhm.
but there are. There
Yeah.
are. We just need to start using them.
Yes.
And we can create as many new treaties as we want.
Mhm.
If we don't start using them, they will always remain useless and have no effect. So, ocean litigation is really dedicated to making marine protection effective by
Mhm.
starting to use the existing marine protection obligations. And in that sense, I cannot say that it much differs from the traditional environmental litigation. It is very much it's a branch of traditional environmental litigation as
Mhm.
climate litigation, but it is a part of litigation that is dedicated or is focusing on enforcing marine protection obligations. So anything in the marine and ocean space.
Right. And when you work in these spaces and like ocean conservation, me personally, I look at things and I wonder, wow, there are things out there that are being put down as laws and they're not being enforced mainly because there are really big challenges around them, like how to even control what fishers take and what's being put back in the ocean, even though it's the fish are dead already. And so, looking at all these big scale issues, I wonder what are some of the biggest challenges in implementing and enforcing ocean rights on a global scale that you have encountered so far? What is your experience with that?
Well, first of all, understanding that implementing an international law or implementing ocean rights on a international level
Mm-hmm.
means that we need to get the state support
Yeah,
because international laws come into being by state consent. So
that's
if
true.
you, and that's a really, really big hurdle, to get all states. If I want to have a universally binding law, I need to get all states universally to agree to it, which inherently in itself already is a huge, huge hurdle. But in getting states to sign on to, for example, ocean rights, what we encounter sometimes as an impediment or as an obstacle is a lack of understanding of what ocean rights is and what it entails, and a uniform messaging.
Mm-hmm.
For example, media many times uses the headers of nature being granted the same rights as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
This certainly creates confusion because for people it is difficult to understand. Understandably, it's difficult to understand. Like, what do you mean with that's a tree? Like, how do you give it the same rights as humans? Does it need to work? Does it need to go to? Does it need employment? Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? And so it's very, very important to have a very clear messaging.
Yeah.
And this is also why we put on so much effort to ensure that there is a robust legal understanding and definition and platform of ocean rights, and that this understanding is translated to the public.
Mm-hmm.
And other obstacles or hurdles to overcome or to communicate about and to create an understanding about is also political and economic interests,
Mm-hmm.
because there's often this perceived conflict with human interests and rights.
Yes.
Yeah, so this requires kind of a really serious consideration. What rights of nature really wants is that nature is being considered in decision making, and this is something that states sometimes are reluctant to really sign on to, at least as something legally binding.
Yeah.
And then one more obstacle or something that makes it, of course, when we're talking about this universal declaration of ocean rights, for example, is also the global coordination, because it is just difficult in achieving this consensus among the states. And I think it is not too early to kind of pre-announce that we are publishing a huge, I think, what's going to be a milestone in that, um, you know, conversation about what rights of nature are. Because in the next week or two, we're going to publish the Ocean Rights Collective website, which is a platform where state supporters come together, international intergovernmental organizations come together who support ocean rights with an aim of achieving a universal declaration of ocean rights or similar by 2030, where we really where we show the partners who work on this, the Ocean Race, Ocean Vision Legal, the Earth Law Center, and where we have huge, we're going to provide policy briefs and huge frequently asked questions sections where we clarify all of these questions that might come up. So I think this Ocean Rights Collective is going to be the international movement really spearheading and bringing forward this whole ocean rights movement. So I'm very, very excited about that.
That sounds super special. Congratulations to that. I imagine that was a lot of effort, and yeah, that's a really big milestone.
Yeah, I
And
can't stress enough how my colleague Michelle Bender is really an absolute superstar in this whole movement. She has advised so many states. She has written so many legal analyses, and so she's put in so much effort in the advocacy and policy making for of rights of nature, and also really lots of this this platform together with our partners, the Ocean Race and Earth Law Center, really created this amazing platform answering all of these questions and thinking about what could be the obstacle or not. So yeah, so I just really want to stress her involvement in that, and that's really something that she's bringing forward.
that's amazing. She sounds like a really, really special and important person. So
She's
I'm
yeah,
really
she's
happy
second.
that you guys have found each other and you can work together and bring these great things into reality. This is amazing. And from our audience, we actually have received a question. And Judith says, it's very true that ethics are a guideline for our survival. But she's also asking and wondering, how can we grant nature a right when we are part of nature?
That's so true. I don't know, maybe you tuned in a little bit late or I wasn't very clear in the beginning because it's exactly what I said in the beginning. And thank you for asking this because this cannot be stressed enough. We are not granting rights of nature, we are recognizing the rights of nature. So, this is such a beautiful question. And that's exactly what it's about. And maybe I've used I hope not, but maybe I've used grand rights of nature, but that's exactly what it is, that we acknowledge that ocean and nature have intrinsic values and inherent rights, and we do precisely not grant them those rights because it's not on us to grant nature its rights. It is for us to recognize that, like humans, also nature has rights. So thank you for this really clarifying, beautiful question.
Thank you. I think that's a very clear answer, and thank you for letting us know again. And it really much sounds like some beliefs and ethics that are core values of Indigenous communities. And I'm wondering, what kind of role do Indigenous communities play in the recognition and enforcement of nature's rights? How are their perspectives and knowledge integrated into these legal frameworks? And maybe you even have an example that we can have a look at together.
Yeah, thank you for saying that because this is one of the most important parts and understandings for us. And first of all, I think it is important to note actually that um, rights and like yeah, granting or acknowledging rights is something from a Western or even a colonial construct. And so inherently, actually, there exist tensions between the indigenous worldview and rights of nature, which also refers back to I think Judith's question, because very much as she said, the indigenous people already recognize that we are not granting rights to nature. They already respect the inherent rights of nature already, and they respect and that in their practices and teachings, and therefore they do not need rights to recognize and honor our interconnected relationships with the ocean. That is something that we do in the Western world. So this is the basis of understanding. But certainly, rights of nature can also be seen as learning from and incorporating many indigenous worldviews of nature into this Western legal construct of rights. And however, rights of nature initiatives is different and therefore not a one size fits all approach. So every time rights of nature are being acknowledged in a different jurisdiction or through a different form, whether it's be it through a constitution or a resolution, it always kind of takes a little bit of a different shape, and there is not a one size fits all approach. And not all of these initiatives aim to integrate Indigenous perspectives into the legal frameworks. But it is just really important to also here acknowledge that there is a meaningful full consultation process. And because you asked for an example, one example of that is the integration in practice of rights of nature is the Te Awa Tupua, or the Wanganui River in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And the treaty agreement between the Maori and the Crown was a compromise, because the process included years of consultation with the local communities surrounding and living with the river to understand their relationship and spiritual understanding. And then legal personhood was a compromise as an example of Western legal systems bending to and embracing and honoring those Indigenous people's values and ethics and belief to what Westerners can understand, which is a legal framework.
Yes. And I think it's the first river globally that's been granted legal personhood, right?
I think so. I'm not sure when the Ganges was in process, and then it didn't go through. So then the Wanganui River or the Te Awa Tupua River was, could be.
That's super exciting. I've seen it recently, and New Zealand or Aotearoa is a country very close to my heart. So this was really exciting news for me. And on the podcast that we've recorded and put out with you, that everyone is very welcome to listen to, you also mentioned that you're now working, or the Maori in New Zealand are working to recognize the rights of whales. Is that right?
That is very right. I'm very proud to say my colleague Michelle, who has written a comprehensive, a really in-depth legal assessment on how rights of whales can be acknowledged, and if they can be acknowledged in New Zealand, and how that could look like. And I also want to mention our partner organization in this regards, the Blue Green Future, which is founded, amongst others, by Ralph Chami, who used to be working for the International Monetary Fund. And what he did is that he provided a market analysis of the value of whales, of a living whale, like how much is a living whale worth on the market. And here I already need to stop and say, this inherently could also already clash with rights of nature, because we certainly don't want to put a price tag on a whale. But that's not what this analysis was about. This analysis was about to make aware and to show how much damage we create when we keep killing whales. And today was such a sad day in this regard, because Iceland just renewed its whaling license for this season, allowing 128 fin whales to be killed. so a very dark day um, for
Absolutely.
and for being a human, and human consciousness, that we actually do that and allow that. Anyway, now I'm drifting off. But so what Ralph did is that he showed that doing that and trying to translate it into this Western mind, where he says that people, these Western people, we understand market value. So this is just a means of translating to them, to showing them the amount of damage, like how much damage we're causing when we're doing this, and combining rights of whales with this market analysis allows us to so effectively then use rights of nature. Because, for example, if you now think that a vessel hits a whale, we can now know that it opens that the vessel has to pay damages for up to $2 million that could go directly into a whale conservation fund that helps conservation of whales. So it's a really nice tool actually to string that together. And then, following that legal assessment, very excitedly, the leaders, the kings of the Maori in the Pacific Island, came together and signed a declaration acknowledging rights of whales, and really acknowledged their rights. So that was very, very amazing. This March 2024.
Amazing. That's so great. And I have another question from the audience, and we're already nearing the end of our Q&A session. So I will be hopefully able to send you the remaining questions, which are 2 for now, and we can answer them in the comments later on. But one comment we got is a beautiful discussion so far, thank you. What are some of the most pressing issues needing ocean litigations ocean litigation right now, and how can the law become a tool to solve those issues?
I think that's probably one of my favorite questions because that's like everything that I do. So I really focus on the enforcement of marine protection regulations. And I think, oh my goodness, there are so many pressing issues out there. Like I just mentioned, how Iceland just renewed the whaling license, which honestly puts tears in my eyes. So right there. But other issues that I think really, really, really need to be looked at is bottom trawling. How can we
Yes.
still allow a fishing technique when there are so many alternatives
Yeah.
that is so harming for the marine environment?
Yeah.
Bottom trawling is a fishing technique where a big trawler drags a huge net, like as big as a cathedral, through the ocean, and it drags it across the ocean floor on rollers, which are several tons heavy. So, dragging these rollers across the ocean floor just damages and eradicates everything that's down there. People compare it with going with hunting deer in the forest by bulldozing the forest. So to me, this is just ridiculous. This is just ridiculous that we still do that. And more ridiculous to me is that in Europe, it's taking place even in the marine protected areas.
No way.
How can you call an area in the ocean protected when you allow bottom trawling? It is
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah. So I'm actually together with my clients, a German NGO, Bund Naturschutz, we're going
Yeah.
against bottom trawling in German marine protected areas, and we've initiated a preliminary proceeding against the German government for
Mm-hmm.
allowing bottom trawling in these areas. And we are currently awaiting their reply. Either they alleviate and they understand that they have to forbid it, or they uphold it, and then we're going to initiate a lawsuit against the government of Germany for allowing bottom trawling in the German marine protected areas, which will then have effect for the whole EU, because this is all based on European Union law. Another very important activity, which I think we really, really urgently need to put a halt to, is deep sea mining. Deep sea
Mm-hmm.
mining is a technique where minerals are mined from the seabed, in depth up to 6 or 7,000 meters, and this is done by remotely operated vehicles that are put down to the ocean floor. They're connected with the vessel through a pipe, and so this rover, the remotely operated vehicle, again drives across the seafloor, pumps up the minerals through that pipe up to the vessel, eradicating everything that's down there, where we don't even know what's down there.
We have no clue.
We have no clue. There have been less people to the deep sea than to the moon.
Yeah.
We literally know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the deep sea. And then there are such things as a precautionary principle that says, oh, when we don't know the effects on the ecosystem, we shouldn't do it.
Yes.
How? Where does the precautionary principle live when we allow activities such as deep sea mining?
Yeah.
That to me is a huge, and then also thinking about the human rights violations, because there is a human right to a healthy environment that is developing. And people, especially indigenous people, especially coastal communities, they do depend on the ocean. And so with actually destroying the ocean, we do harm the intrinsic values of the ocean, the human right to a healthy environment, human right to life, food, and so many other rights that are fundamental and should be protected. So there are many, many issues, but these are three that stick out to me.
Absolutely. And three such huge and important ones. And if I may, there is one last comment that's really, really interesting that I would like to read out to you, and maybe you can give us a brief comment before we close down the Q&A session for tonight. It is very long, so very long. I'm going to read it out loud. There seems to be a constant opposition in current rights of nature literature between anthropogenic conceptions of nature, for example, nature as a commodification, and ecocentric or biocentric conceptions of nature, for example, nature as having intrinsic rights and values. However, there seems to be an inherent contradiction in considering nature as intrinsically valuable when value is namely imposed upon nature by us. Indeed, the only thing that changes is for what kind of purpose we value natural elements for, whether for more anthropogenic reasons or for ecocentric us. However, it is still also for our convenience. How do you reconcile this paradox with ocean rights, especially when historically the ocean has always been crucial for the development of society, especially also for colonialism? So, where do we start in decolonizing the ocean?
That's a very beautiful comment, and I think it refers to some of the problems that we, coming from a Western world, cannot solve with a Western thinking. Because when you think of it, rights is nothing natural. Rights is something human invented. So
Yes.
how can something human invented be without flaw? It is not. I remember when I went to law school, which is quite a few years back, and I really loved philosophy. So in legal philosophy, we started thinking about, are there natural rights, nature rights? So not rights of nature, not does a tree have rights, but are there rights that were given that exist by nature that are not invented by humans? To
Okay.
me,
Yes.
yeah, and it's a nice thought, but and because you could say, well, right to life, for example, not killing someone should be a natural right that cannot be challenged. And this is also what constitutions do. In Germany, where I'm from, the right to life is in Article 1 of the Constitution, and there is no other constitutional right that you may even hold against it. So this is untouchable. So could that be a natural right? I don't think so, because the rights, and this is also where there's contradiction with with the indigenous peoples' worldviews comes from rights as something that we've invented in Western societies to coordinate life, to to make sure that the society can live with and amongst each other without stealing, without killing, without something like that. So it's really just guidelines on how we live. And the rights are informed by our values. So we at some stage decided, or people had this common value of, well, killing, not so good. Stealing, also not so good. So, and then by time this develops, it was first in the 10 Commandments. This is why we have in the Christianity, we have 10 Commandments. That's also just, sorry, I hope I'm not stepping on anyone's toes, but this is something to guide people's interaction with each other and to tell you to not, steal your neighbor's wife. And so this then develops over time, and over time develops into rights that we say, okay, this, we need someone to safeguard these values. So we have judges. And then vice versa. Rights start informing our values, because when I'm telling now my child, hey, you cannot kill someone because that's prohibited, because that's in Article 1 of our Constitution, the human life is untouchable. I don't even go into the value and explain it to him, but through knowing that this is an untouchable right and it's prohibited, it has the value of creating the right. So it's reciprocal, values and rights. But it is this conflict, and I myself find myself in this conflict. It is Western, and it is something invented by human, and we put it onto nature. But what helps me reconcile and be okay with it is then at least I accept that nature and the trees out here and the lake out here, because currently I'm visiting my family in Germany, or the ocean out there when I'm at home in Indonesia. At least I can make sure and work that people understand that nature has the same rights that I claim for myself. And when I claim for myself that I don't want to be harmed and that I don't want to be killed, then I can do the same for nature. And at least there, and although then still this is maybe something human made, at least it's equal. And at least I'm not putting myself over or as more important as something, but acknowledge that I am just the tiniest speck in this universe and just a part of this ecosystem. And the biggest ecosystem in the world is the ocean. And anytime that I sit at the beach and I look at the ocean, or I go surfing or swimming or snorkeling, and I can be part of it, I find this a humbling experience and reminding me of how beautiful it is to at least try that its intrinsic values are recognized as much as mine are.
Thank you so much. This was truly, truly beautiful. And I think it's such a valuable perspective. And for everyone who listened, I hope this resonated with you as much as it did resonate with me. Thank you for all the contributions you've made in the chats and the comment sections. Thank you so much, Anna, for being here today, for speaking up for the ocean and its inhabitants. We also have people in the comments saying, thank you so much. It was a beautiful discussion. And we would love to close this down by just saying a big thank you to you and your team. All the best for the future. And yeah, just thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. If you have any last words you would like to say, the stage is yours.
Well, likewise, thank you so much. Thank you, Ramona, for making the time to meeting me. Thank you, Healthy Seas, for recording this podcast with me and providing me with a platform where I can speak up and share my values. And more than that, even thank you for everyone listening in today and also asking these amazing and so beautiful questions. I think we've touched upon it, that one of the obstacles in advancing these new rights of nature, and this recognition that nature has rights, is a lack of communication.
Mm.
So anytime and every time that we stand up and we find a platform where we can communicate and where we can talk about values, philosophy, laws, economy, and create bridges between all of these worldviews, I think we get a little bit closer to what I think is an aim or something nice in which nature and humans have intrinsic values that are recognized equally. So thank you so much for participating and being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great time and see you soon. In case you haven't listened yet, the podcast links are in the comment sections posted earlier. And yeah, goodbye. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye, Ramona.
Goodbye.